welcome back from the break. Okay, this morning you looked at preparing the offender. Research has shown, at least in America, typically meeting the offender, it's about an hour long, sometimes 45 minutes. The next step is meeting the victim. But let me say something before this. In the vast majority of cases in America, they are nonviolent property offenses, minor fights, assaults, mainly with juveniles, but some with adults. And they are referred by police or prosecutors or judges. And because they're referred by someone from the criminal justice system, the facilitator first meets with the offender for all the reasons you saw there, to hear their story, to check out, do they admit to what happened? And we don't want to even bother going to the victim until we're sure the offender admits to it and is willing to go forward. So in the vast majority of cases, you begin with meeting the offender. And once it's clear they admit it, then you meet the victim. However, in 31 states in America, there is formal state protocol to allow victims of the worst crimes imaginable, murder, multiple murder, terrorism, sexual assault. They have the right to meet the prisoner if the prisoner is willing. In those very severe violence cases, which is where I do facilitation more in the last 10 years than minor cases, and my more recent research, in those kind of serious cases, they are victim initiated. And victims initiate those cases anywhere from 5 to 35 years later, long after the court and the justice system has done what it's supposed to do. So in those cases that are severe, severe violence, they are victim initiated. In that case, you first meet with the victim to respond to their request and to hear their story, and then you go to the offender. It's different. Now, there's some very serious cases you deal with, like negligent homicide from drunk driving. In America, for the last 30, 40 years, those cases periodically also go through the system and are referred by prosecutors. And they, just like here in America, they would happen early on in the process, not 30 years later, not 10 years later. Okay? So, getting back to this case, you saw the offender preparation. That was only 15 minutes there. You know, a real one would have been more like an hour. He was willing to go forward. So now you'll see how I would go and meet the victim. I would have spoken to the victim on the phone, introducing myself and seeing if they were willing to have me come over or meet with them to learn about the program or to meet at the office, wherever. And what you'll see here is me preparing the victim.
Victim offender mediation and conferencing represents a very promising pathway to restorative justice through dialogue. It has clearly been found to be a practical and time-tested approach that results in many positive outcomes for victims, offenders, family members, and the larger community. The process of victim offender mediation or conferencing has been found to be most effective when the following concerns are addressed: victim-sensitive procedures that are respectful and offer choice, respectful treatment of those who commit criminal acts, voluntary participation by all parties, in-person preparation of the involved parties before they meet each other, use of a style of mediation that is dialogue-driven, not settlement-driven, often referred to as humanistic mediation, flexibility so that the process can be adapted to the specific needs and cultural context of the parties. In this extended training video, you will see two cases that highlight the importance of adapting the process to the needs of the person who was victimized and the person who caused the harm. In both cases, you will see segments of the separate preparation meetings and the mediation session. The first case involves just the victim, offender, and a single mediator. The second case involves other family members and a neighbor, as well as co-mediators.
Thanks, Rick, for coming by today after school. You know, when I talked to you last week on the phone, I had talked with your dad quite a bit beforehand, and I was hoping he'd be able to come today. I talked to him about what the program was about and why your probation officer referred you to it, but he made it pretty clear because of the double shifts I guess he's doing at the factory, there's just no way that he could come by with you. And he said you just should stop by, and I just wanted to make sure that you feel okay meeting today without your dad.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, I'm glad that he's not here, and because, I guess he'd just make things more difficult, and so I guess I feel fine coming down here by myself.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned to you on the phone when I talked to you, I'm a volunteer that works with the local restorative justice program, and I'm not a court official, so I haven't read all the legal documents on what's happened. I mean, I know it was a break into a home, but what actually did happen, Rick, when that occurred a couple months ago?
Well, some friends and I, we were out drinking, and we were kind of getting low on cash, and we needed some cash, and we wanted to do something. We wanted something to do, so we, found a house, and my friends told me to go break in while they waited in the car, and so I went in through a window, and I took a TV and $200 in cash, and so that was kind of it. I mean, we needed something to do, and we needed some cash, and so that's what we did.
When were you arrested, and what was that like?
Well, they found out a little bit later, and they came and got me, and then they took me off to the station and questioned me there.
Mm-hmm. Was your dad home at the time? What was that like, getting arrested at home?
He kind of had just gotten home, and he was really quite upset, that they'd come, and that I had gotten arrested and all that. He was really upset, though, that the other kids didn't get caught, too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Would you like to hear a little more about how the program actually operates?
Yeah.
Well, this would give you the opportunity to actually meet the person whose home you broke into and to talk about what happened, the impact on her, the impact on you, and it would give you the chance to express any concerns you have, questions that she might have, I'm sure she would have of you, and then also to look at developing a plan to repair the harm, what the court calls restitution, some way of actually paying back. How does that sound to you, the whole idea of meeting her?
I'm a little nervous about meeting her, and because it's just kind of nervous, just meeting her and for the first time and stuff. But I would like I would like to do, help fix what I did and kind of, pay her back.
I'm curious, would you think back at what you did? How are you feeling about that now?
I'm feeling really bad, and, I shouldn't have done that, if, we didn't have any money, then we should have just, stopped and gone home or something, and, I shouldn't have, accepted, them telling me to go in and take the TV and stuff, and just, I'm feeling kind of bad about it right now.
Well, when we meet, and I have to make this very clear, this depends on her interest in doing this too, just as you have choice in this process, Rick. The person whose home you broke into, they have a choice too. And that's just very important that we make it as voluntary as possible. But if we do come together, if she's agreeable, when we come together, everything we talk about is pretty confidential. It's meant to really stay among us. It's not like I write up a report on what everyone's saying and submit it to the court. The only thing that would go to the court would be an actual agreement, if that is reached. And the way the mediation sessions typically go, I would begin by making kind of an opening statement, just saying a few things about what we'll be doing and any ground rules for communication. And then the two of you would have an opportunity to kind of tell your perspective on what happened. And typically we begin with the person who was victimized, to let them tell you directly, how it affected them. And then you would also have time to kind of tell your perspective. And then there'd be plenty of time just for questions or any concerns you have. And then later we'd talk about the actual losses and any ideas for repayment. I'm curious, Rick, do you have any thoughts about the repayment issue? How you would prefer to do that?
Well, I was kind of, thinking is maybe I could help her, do some work that she needed me to do, like, she needed me to help, dig something, or just kind of, do some work helping her, if that would be fine, or maybe getting a job and paying her, through my paychecks and through what I get. And
where are you working, Rick?
I'm working at a grocery store.
And so, what kind of take-home pay do you have on a weekly basis?
It's kind of about 30 to 70, depending on how
okay.
long I work.
Well, what you mentioned about your thoughts about maybe you could do some work for her, that is a possibility, but that's totally up to her. Some people who have been victimized don't want that. They don't want anyone coming back by their house. Others actually prefer that. But that's one of the things you'd be able to talk about in the mediation session. And whatever is agreed upon, it's up to the two of you. It's not like I'm not a judge. As a mediator, I'm just working with both of you to provide an opportunity to both talk about what happened and to repair the harm in whatever way possible. Rick, we encourage folks to have a support person with them during the actual mediation session, like a parent in your case, or a uncle, a coach, whatever. And same thing for the person who was victimized. Would you like anyone to be present with you during the mediation session?
No, just by myself is fine.
You're sure you feel okay, just you want to do it yourself?
Yeah, just doing it myself.
Okay. The other thing I need to check out with you is I am going to go meet with the person whose home you broke into in the next few days. And is there anything that we've said here that you wouldn't want me to share with her in case she asks? See, I'm not going to go to her and give a report like saying, Rick said all of these kind of things. But in case she asks something, is there anything that we've talked about that you would not want me to share?
I don't really think of anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, any questions, any other questions about the actual mediation session before we kind of wrap things up?
So it's just going to be like a mediator and us two?
Yeah, well, that depends if she wants a support person or not. I'll have to ask her. But it would be, actually, we'd be sitting at probably a table like this, and I'd be sitting here, and you would be here, and the person whose home you broke into would be over here. And I'll be beginning by saying a few things, and then very quickly it'll get into each of you telling each other your perspective and what happened and how it affected you. And typically, I'm very much in the background. I'm not talking a lot. This is really a time for the two of you to talk together. But I'm also there in case, there's any problems. If you have a hard time talking about certain things. And I'm there to make sure just that it remains a very safe place to talk.
Okay.
But it's also important that you realize I'm not there as an advocate. Just like I'm meeting with you, Rick, I also have to meet with her. And so I won't be taking sides with either of you. That's what a mediator is. I'll be helping you both be able to talk about it. And then I'll help with the restitution agreement, the plan to repair the harm. If you actually work out an agreement, we'll actually put it in writing, the specific terms of it, how much and over what period of time. And then both of you would sign it, I would sign it as a witness, and you'd each get a copy of it. And then a copy would go back to court too.
All right.
Any other questions at all? Or?
No.
Okay. Well, thanks again for stopping by, and I'll call you back after I meet with the other person, whose home was broken into, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for stopping by today. When we talked a little on the phone last week, I explained a little bit about the program, but we didn't have much time to, and I'm so glad you could stop by today, because this is a time for me to learn more about what actually happened first and how it's affected you, and then I can tell you, quite detailed what the program is and what it isn't. And then you can make a decision if this, is something you'd like to be involved in. There's no requirement whatsoever. The court thought this could be a helpful service to you, but it's totally voluntary on your part. So, I think I mentioned to you, I'm not a court official. I'm a volunteer here in the community. I work with the Restorative Justice Program here, and I haven't read the legal documents of what actually happened. I know that it was a break into your home, I believe, a couple months ago, and but I don't really know all of the details. What actually did happen, Sarah, and the impact it's had on you?
Well, it's probably like any other break-in that happened, but it was just very different when it happens to you. And I've lived in that house for 25, 26 years, and nothing, I know my neighbors know me, and, it's like a small community. And I have my routine, I have my mother there with me, and we were just out for a while, and someone just came in there and just took things of mine, and I know that it's not a lot. I know that it's not a lot. It was $200 in a television, and I know that there are break-ins where there's a lot more taken, but this is just huge for me in my home as well as my community. That we've just been it's torn apart my home, in that it's just, I don't feel safe in there. My mother talks about moving. I can't afford to move anywhere. I don't want to move. And I know I can't get back all that was taken. And I'm not talking about the money. Everybody's told me that, well, insurance isn't going to pay you for the money. You can get a TV, yada, yada. That's not the big part of it, For sure I can replace the money, and I can, get another television set. But there's a part there that's just wrecked my home and wrecked that whole sense of safety and security that I don't know how to get that back. I don't know what I can do to get that back. I don't know what I can do to help my mother feel safe again. I can put locks on doors and get locks on the window, and, she's talking about a burglar alarm, and I know those things aren't going to make her feel any more safe, because there's something that goes a lot deeper than just those, mechanical pieces, those hardware pieces that it's just, insurance isn't going to take care of it. Police aren't going to take care of it. It's not going to be replaced. My neighbors feel bad for me. And so they even react to me differently, as if there's, something wrong with me now that, I've brought this into the neighborhood, brought this into the community, and, Mark, the window was broken, but the window's been broken for like 8 years, and it's almost was like a running joke, but it shouldn't matter, that the window was broken. It's just a hardship. It's not just losing things. It's a physical and emotional hardship for me, for my mother, for my little neighborhood community.
Well, as we mentioned in the letter that you received before I even called you, this program is run by a local community agency, and it's really meant to provide assistance to people like yourself who have been victimized by crime, to see if you want to actually enter into a meeting with the person responsible for it. Many people like yourself do want to do that. Some don't. That's why it's meant to be totally voluntary. And if that occurred, that would be with someone like myself called a mediator, being present. Just as I'm meeting with you now today, Sarah, last week I met with the young man who was caught and pled guilty to doing this. But my role as a mediator is not to take sides with either of you. I'm just working with both of you to provide an opportunity, if you want, to be able to talk about it and to see if you can develop a plan for repairing the harm. As you even think of the possibility of that, what kind of goes on in your mind? I mean, is there any interest? Are there questions you have? Are there concerns you'd want to express? Or?
Well, do I have to get an attorney to do this?
No, it's very important that if you have an attorney working with you, that they're aware of it and are supportive. But they would not be present during this, but it's important that they're supportive of it. This program was actually set up by our local courts, and the prosecuting attorney here in our town is quite supportive of it. So it's been around for a few years, but it is meant, it's your choice. I can't emphasize that enough. It's not like you got to do this and this is the only way you can get restitution.
Yeah. Based on what I've said, do you think it would be worth my while?
Let me explain a little more about what it is, and then you figure out if it sounds like it could be helpful. If we came together, we'd come together in a room around a table kind of like this, and I'd be sitting here, and the young man who was found guilty would be sitting over here. You'd be like this. And I would say a few things to kind of open it up and identify some ground rules. And it's very important that you realize if we do come together, whatever is said is pretty confidential. It's meant to really stay there. I'm not going to be writing up any kind of report saying you said this or he said this. The only thing that would be written up and go back to the court would be an actual, what the court calls a restitution plan, a plan for repairing the harm. And you both would get a copy of that too, if you work that out. So I would say a few things, and then what I normally do is turn to the person like yourself who's been victimized by this and give you the opportunity to look directly at the person responsible and tell them the impact. Most kids who do this don't have a clue of the impact it has on people like ourselves. It's typically just get in there, get out, get some property, money, whatever. So you would have an opportunity to tell your perspective, your story, how it's impacted you directly to them, to the young man. Then he would have time to kind of tell his perspective to you in his own kind of story, so to speak. Then you'd have plenty of time to ask each other questions. Some of the questions you've asked of me that I can't answer, only he can answer. Like why did he do this? Why did he pick out your place? And then later, we would talk about actual losses, and I'd want you to bring any, documentation of losses, receipts for the TV, whatever, and to see if the two of you could work out a plan to repair the harm. And I'm not like a judge, I'm not making any decisions whatsoever. Any agreement that you're able to work out, it's very important that you feel it's fair and that he feels it's fair and that it's workable. And that's kind of how it flows. I'm not talking a lot during it. I'm kind of help get it going, and I'm there to make sure it stays a safe place for what we call dialogue, the ability to just talk with each other. But I'm not going to be talking a lot. It's really your opportunity to speak with each other.
At this point, I feel like I could say yes. I don't know if I might change my mind down the road, though, as it gets closer. Okay.
Well, that's okay too. I mean, I would not encourage you to rush into something like this.
Okay.
I can honestly say that from quite a few years now of doing this, and actually the research I've read on it, a great many people that have been victimized have found this helpful. They report that it's less scary. It just kind of takes a lot of the power out of it to actually talk to the person who did it and to work out some way of repairing the harm. But I also want to point out some don't want to do it, and it's not meant for everybody. So, it's kind of thing, if you do agree to it now, if for some reason you felt really uncomfortable later, you should feel absolutely free to call me back.
Well, okay. Well, I'll give it a try. Yeah.
Well, let me check out a few other things. I mentioned how we prefer to give the opportunity to the victim, person like yourself first, to talk to the person who committed the offense, because frankly, crime victims don't get much attention in the justice system, as you well know. Do you feel comfortable with that, with beginning to tell him your story?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is we really encourage support people. If you want to bring someone along, that's absolutely fine.
No, I'll probably come alone. I don't think my mother would be up for it, and I want to do this on my own. So
You sure?
Yeah.
Well,
I want to do this.
If you change your mind, feel absolutely free to call me and we can make arrangements.
All right.
So, if your mother would want to come, that's fine, or any other
Yeah.
support person. Sarah, are there any other questions you have before we wrap up, or just concerns, about the whole impact of this?
I've, I don't think I've lived a sheltered life or anything like that, but this is by far, the worst thing that's happened to me. And that feeling not being able to protect my home, to protect my mother, and, to protect myself has just been, it's a sense of, just a feeling of just total violation that someone could do that and then just leave, just leave, and I can't get past it. It feels like it's just staying on me, like clinging to me, just like a filth, that I can't seem to get off of me, and it increases when I go back into my home, and my home is supposed to feel safe. So, I have a lot of hope for this process. It's not, if I didn't get anything back other than a sense of being clean again, I would be happy. The money would be difficult to replace, but I'd do it. A TV, I can borrow a television, but to feel clean again, to feel secure in my home. That's what I want.
Well, and those are many of the issues that can be talked about when you actually meet with this young man. And I want to make it clear, we can't guarantee that this will fix all of those feelings, so to speak, that you have. But I can say with a great deal of confidence that the vast majority of people like yourself who have entered this process report to us afterwards that they feel safer. They feel less fearful of being re-victimized again. So those are the kind of things that can be talked about.
Well, that's what I want, you know. If nothing, that's what I would like to have. And I don't expect you to guarantee it, but that's what I hope for.
Well, thanks again for coming to our office today to be able to talk about this. And
Yeah.
I'll be calling you in a few days. And, I did need to ask you, by the way, again, in terms of the location, any thoughts of where to you would feel the safest?
This building works fine.
Is it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back here
Okay.
if it can be arranged.
Well,
Otherwise, I don't know.
We could arrange that. You know, sometimes people prefer going to a conference room in a library. A few even want to do it in their home, but it's really totally up to, it's your choice. So
This works for me.
this works, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay.
you.
One of the most helpful and practical and respectful things to do during preparing either the offender and especially the victim is choice. 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 That's what empowers people. That's what gives them some respect and some involvement. How I gave the choice of, do you want, I always encourage bringing support people. So it's not just the victim and offender, but if they want to bring a sister or a brother or a parent or a friend, that's okay, but you need to prepare them too. Give them the choice. The choice, now this, I don't know how this would work in Turkey, but the choice of where to meet. I would encourage you, even though you always meet in the prosecutor's office, I would encourage you to consider, could there be a procedure where there's a limited choice? Like you could, depending on what the victim would want, you could meet in the prosecutor's office, you could meet at some other public setting where there's a conference room. And again, I don't know how that would translate in terms of the reality in Taiwan, but giving people a choice can be very helpful. I know the offender would certainly feel safer not being in the prosecutor's office, but being in a more neutral setting. Do you have community centers in Taiwan? No. Okay. So it's a matter of just seeing, are there other realistic places where you can meet? And we don't have to talk about that a lot of the time. What you saw me do is something else very important. Did you see how I made it clear? Even if you decide now to go forward, if you decide you don't want to later, that's okay. I said that a couple times. Now, some mediators, facilitators would not want to say that. They want to make sure they're going to come in, and they don't want to say you can back out. I have learned, as I mentioned earlier, the more you give people choice, including the choice to not go forward with it, the safer they feel, and frankly, the more likely they're going to go, because they know they have an exit. This is particularly important with injury cases and even domestic violence, where the emotions are higher. For people to know that if things really develop in a bad way, the mediation can be ended, or they can leave. You don't want people to leave if they've agreed, but letting them have an exit is very, very important. With your domestic violence cases, do you always do those in consultation with the local victim support program? That is extremely important. That's another. And do you cooperate with them? Work with them? Okay. This is why I am so amazed with what you're doing in Taiwan and how you're doing it different than in some other countries and cultures. And you've got your own issues and challenges to face, but you are really doing some very important stuff. To take a lot of domestic violence cases and to not have consultation with victim support or a domestic violence program would be irresponsible, unethical. That's why having victim support groups or domestic violence centers to consult with them, even to have them present during the mediation, perhaps sitting in the background, or if a woman has been beaten by her husband, they might feel far safer having someone from the domestic violence prevention program sitting right next to them as a support person. And they wouldn't say a lot, but they would be there. And if things got real tense, you could have a break, and the two of them could go off and talk, kind of help each other. That's good to know.